Welcome to the Marketer Whisperer. In each episode, I'll focus on a particular aspect of marketing leadership, with backstories and practical tips to boost your confidence without sacrificing who you are. Now let's dive into this week's topic. Today, this is a very sensitive topic. It's about, that feeling of isolation when you go up the ranks. Right, I've talked to so many marketing leaders who have actually experienced the same thing. So it's very common. That shock of solitude when you climb up the corporate ladder, that is really surprising. One day you're one of the team, sharing inside jokes, collaborating on projects, enjoying the gossips about the leadership team. And quite honestly, when times get tough, when you go through the horrible brand planning process that some of us have, you really do find comfort with your teammates, your colleagues. Most likely they're all going through the same struggles, so you do find a bit of solace in the pain of others, and you therefore you share openly what's going on, sometimes actually to the extent that it's quite negative, because when everybody complains, there's never really a positive outcome out of that. But anyway, I digress. One day you're that, and the next day you're the one calling the shots. You're the one making the tough decisions alone. You're the one having to deal with the very senior leadership team members, your boss, who's probably a VP, CEO, like double eek. The loss of friendly shoulders to lean on is one of the biggest shocks to your system at that point. I could even compare that to like talking to some nasty buyers from the retailer side, and it's got nothing to do, because that's just a really quick stuff. That feeling of solitude doesn't happen overnight. It creeps in over a certain period of time. The first moment, because everything is so new, there's so much information together, you don't really feel like it because you're talking to so many people. At some point when you get established into this new marketing leader role that you're in, so it could be a marketing director, for example, then when you start struggling with some challenges and your old habits of wanting to open up with a colleague who may go through the same struggles, for all you know, this is difficult. Who are you going to talk to? You look around the leadership table and you suddenly realize you're expected to be the expert. Previously, you could lean on others for support, but this time, all the eyes are on you. You're the one that is supposed to have all the answers, and it's freaking difficult. It really is difficult. So you hold it in, you keep a kind of a strong face in these situations, but inside sometimes you're dying, sometimes you're wondering whether you've made the right choice to accept this promotion or to be so happy about being promoted. You even sometimes doubt yourself that you can actually be competent in this role. So there's a lot of insinuous thoughts that follows the promotion in a leadership role. And there's something called like the 3 Ps of a leader: the poisonous perceived perfection. The poisonous perceived perfection. Sorry, Mike, I'm there's a lonely reality that comes with this role. One, you do not expect, perhaps simply because you've never heard your boss or the higher levels talking about it and sharing how lonely they felt, right? How many of you have come across leaders who have said it gets really lonely and elaborate on that, not just saying it for the sake of it, because everybody can just say a few words, but they're not necessarily authentic and experienced. And the burden you've got of driving the strategy, creating a vision, managing upwards, with highly demanding executives in this position. So you're sandwiched between highly demanding and sometimes emotionally unintelligent executives. And then you've got on the other side some some of your team members who can be quite junior, so they need support, and you need to oversee their performance. So you're sandwiched between those two, and you absorb the juniorness or the lack of assertiveness or sometimes maturity from your team, so that the senior executive don't see that and use it as a weapon in your next brand meeting, and vice versa. You also absorb the nastiness, the directness, the toughness of some of the feedback from the executive sometimes, so that your team doesn't feel isn't burdened by it and doesn't affect their level of confidence. So you're kind of sandwiching and absorbing, and it's really taking a toll on you. I know that firsthand. And so this can create, therefore, an isolating sense of having to figure it all out alone. You have to figure it all out alone. And if nothing's done, this isolation can quickly turn into some unhealthy self-doubt, imposter syndrome even, because as marketing leaders, we're expected to have all the answers. No one in the executive board will acknowledge or accept that you've got to double check. You don't know about that issue. You know, whilst you have, 15 people that you're leading, cross-functional teams you're overseeing as well, you're expected to have all the answers. You're expected to be assertive, and probably the worst stuff is a confident decision maker. And if I relate kind of all the conversations I've had with marketing leaders, so marketing directors mostly, confident decision making is really one of their biggest challenge. The reality is very different from this poisonous perceived perfection. And because as a leadership coach, I get to talk to senior leaders one-on-one rather often, I can tell you this much: they do not know everything. They struggle. They are scared to be incompetent. And sometimes some of them even wonder how they got where they are today. They wondered, how did the company hire me in this position? These are the thoughts. Those are very surface levels. I should probably do an episode about that. But those are the thoughts that some really senior leaders have shared with me. So those thoughts are, in fact, taking place at all levels, but very few people are talking about it. Therefore, that actually is a brilliant segue to the antidote, vulnerability. I know we talk a lot about that. If you read Brené Brown's books, it's all about being vulnerable. And having worked across like 5 FMCG large organizations, I've seen great leadership and really poor leadership. And I have to say that within the great leadership I've experienced myself, vulnerability was there. The leaders who opened up about, their strengths, but also their weaknesses and their fears. Do you know what happened? People grew fonder of them. They were actually inspired because there's, take yourself away from the corporation for a minute and put yourself back in a social environment. The people who come across very sure of themselves, overly confident, it's really hard to relate to them and to feel quite close and build a really strong bond. All of a sudden, someone takes, over the conversation and talks about how painful this experience has been, how they've struggled with this situation, and all eyes will go on this person, not to judge them, but actually to listen, because everybody's got struggle, everybody's got issues, everybody's got challenges, and knowing someone else is also challenged by a similar situation is comforting. It is comforting. So, leadership is a continuous growth journey. We know that. We're all just winging it, doing the best we can. That's all we're doing. So the antidote to isolation is being vulnerable. Be careful. Isolation is different to solitude. an openness is quite key when it's carefully selected. Being open and vulnerable. You can't do, you could do that all the time, but then people will lose, you probably lose a bit of credibility, because people need to see, it's just like when there's too much good, you need a bit of bad to make the good stand out. Same with vulnerability. You have to be strategic with it. Behind closed doors, you can openly share your uncertainties, your insecurities, your fears with a trusted mentor or coach outside of your company. My personal experience was, I think I had actually I've had a mentor in one of my last work experience, and he was a senior leader in the company I was working. So it was a whole program about it. And the thing is, unless I knew or I figured out that we shared similar views on how things were running, so good and bad, I never felt comfortable to open up. So in fact, those mentor meetings were just useless, to be honest, because I knew the guy was very fond of the company and the leadership style, and whilst there was a lot of aspects I enjoyed, there was many things I've really struggled with, and I wanted to talk about that, but I don't think he could see from my perspective, the situation. So I did get that very quickly, so I closed off. So we talked about very practical stuff, but it was not mentoring at all. Anyway, back to my topic. Find someone you can trust, someone who could understand what you're going through. Outside of the company, best. Within the company, if you trust them and you know they'll be really good at changing perspective and making you see it from a different perspective. So having a safe space to work through your growing pains is really, really key. It really is. And then, additionally, be selectively vulnerable with your team. You can share some challenges authentically. It makes you sound and look like a human, which they do like. You don't want to be like a robot where, you brush off all challenges and nothing really hits you. It does, because it does hit you. Share with them the fact that you too don't know, how to answer some questions from the senior leadership. You have to do your research, you rehearse a lot. Tell them stories when you've completely lost confidence or you blanked completely in front of a VP. The thing is, their confidence in you, when you will talk like this and you'll talk about these things, the confidence in you will grow as a result. And when actually in my role as a leadership coach, I speak to marketing directors or VPs, I tell them exactly that. Tell them your struggles, some of them. Tell them. They are waiting, in fact, for you to say that, because otherwise they see this polished version of a VP, and there's nothing less inspiring than that. They want to know you're human. They want to know you're the same, and they can actually grow into someone like you. They can be inspired by you. So instead of you thinking that your team will find your flaws laughable, you'll lose points of credibility amongst them, in fact, the opposite happens. Credibility grows. Credibility grows. Your credibility will grow when you are vulnerable with them. Do it during the next marketing team meeting. And finally, remember, you don't have to have all the answers. Why? Because you just can't. You can't. No one does. If I ask you, whatever you're selling, say you're selling a product in large, FM retailers, do you know what's the weighted distribution of your latest NPD in the Tesco Express store week commencing the 6th of December 2023? No. Because if you were, you'd be a freak. If you knew, you'd be a freak. No one does that. No one does know that. Of course, you need to do your job. There are things you should be knowing, in control of, informed about. But back to my topic, instead, allow your team to step up and collaboratively lead. Leadership was never meant to be a solo journey, really. So you need to involve them in it. And I'm going to finish this episode by giving you 4 easy tips to fight isolation. So if you're a marketing leader and you find that as you grew up the ranks, you feel a bit more isolated, 1, establish a coaching relationship with someone external who can help you with experience perspective. That is key, because you'll feel you can actually open up on anything. There will be no judgment. This won't go into your end of year review. You won't have to have awkward conversations with your direct manager if they knew about it. So you can really open up. And that, it's, I don't know if you've ever done that with friends, when you kind of share something and the load has come off and you just feel so much lighter. It's exactly that. At least you kind of get stuff out of off your chest. And at best, because they're supposed to do their job, but a good coach would help you define how to deal with it. 2, schedule regular team check-ins and focus on collaborative strategy instead of status update. Status updates are, that's me snoring. It's not boring because there's a lot of interesting stuff, but don't make your marketing team meeting gathering into status updates. They're just, you lose them. You need to bring topics that stimulate the collective. So collaborative strategy, I call them, but I can share with you more information to help you do that. So schedule regular team meetings. 3, don't stay in your cubicle or your office. When I was working for Lindt, there was a HR director who was amazing. And when we were going through an office transformation, office and people, culture, she actually ditched her office and made it a meeting room. So we could have more meeting room to kind of use for our collaborative meetings. And she was instead sitting, in the kind of partition area of HR. So open plan, space for her next to her colleagues. I think she was the only one to have done that. And then, if she needed to have like a private space to have privacy and, private conversation, then she could just book a meeting room and do that. That was amazing. I think she's the only leader that I have seen do that. And that really paid dividend, I think, for her. So don't stay in your cubicle or your office. Sit with the team. You don't need to ditch it if you don't want to, but sit with the team. They're around you. Sit with other departments. Move around. You'll build better relationships with people, and you'll definitely enjoy these dynamics. It won't be awkward if you're not awkward about it. That's for sure. And the 4th one I want to share with you is, because I think I've covered that already quite a bit, but share moments of authentic vulnerability to build relatable trust. Make sure to observe the room, the atmosphere, and once you see your team is either in need of a bit of a inspiring speech, they are going through a couple of challenges, they are celebrating something, but some other things are just not working, you'll be able to determine, which are the best moments to pick to do so. But those moments will be key, and they will forever remember what you say. Make it a story. Don't make it up. Share something true, but share it using storytelling frameworks. It's really, really powerful. So I hope this has helped you make you feel a bit less isolated and alone in your journey, because it's everyone. I'll probably do another episode to talk about how I became a head of brand back in 2019 and felt so lonely. I'll share my own experience, but perhaps in the next episode, in fact. But I'll leave you with that, and don't think you're just on your own. I'm just saying that, but you can book a free 30-minute call with me. I've got the link on my website. have a chat and see how you can get out of that. There are many, many ways, more than the 4 that I gave today. Right, speak to you next week on another episode topic. And thank you for joining me today. I hope it's been really useful to you. I've got one request. I'd love if you could rate this podcast, because it really does help to reach more emerging leaders like you out there. So also, if you want to get in touch with me personally to discuss one-to-one, group coaching or workshops opportunities, you can find me on LinkedIn. That's probably the easiest. And my name is Magali Leroux. You can find it in the bio of the show. Thanks for listening and speak very soon.